this evening's meeting of the Finance and General Purposes Committee. I'd like to start by reminding people this meeting is being filmed, and that by being present, attendees are deemed to have agreed to be filmed and for the use of those images and sound recordings. Members should not disclose any personal information of individuals, as this would infringe on the data protection rights of the individual. And I'll remind people to mute their microphones when not speaking. As this is a formal meeting, members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak during the public open session, but not at any other time. Okay, so apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Ramsey. I believe everyone else is here. So we move on to...
Councillor Bond is not here.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bond is not here. No, so
Yet,
indeed. So we move on to declarations of interest. Does anyone have any disclosable pecuniary interests, first of all? Councillor Alban?
Yeah, I guess it's pecuniary interest in item 6C, as I'm an allotment holder.
Okay. And any non-pecuniary interests, Councillor Russell?
Non-pecuniary in the grant application for the RAF cadets. My grandson's a cadet.
Councillor Storm?
Non-pecuniary in 6A in respect of the Biggleswade Community Safety Group.
Okay, thank you. And I've got a non-pecuniary interest in 6A, as I'm the District Commissioner for Biggleswade District Scouts and trustee of Bedfordshire County Scouts, who are the actual applicants for that Scout application. Councillor Bond.
non-pecuniary 6A, Biggleswade History Society.
Any others? All done. Good. So we move on then to the public open session. So would any members of the public like to speak or ask any questions at this point? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Over to the Scouts.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to listen to us this evening. My name is Emily Wood. I'm 12 years old and I'm a member of Owen Scout Group in the Biggleswade Scout Association.
My name is Jenna. I am 16 years old and I am a member of Phoenix Explorers in the Biggleswade Scout Association.
Towards the end of last year, 3 other members of the Scout Group and I were chosen to attend the Scout Jamboree next September in South Korea. The World Jamboree is the largest youth education event in the world. Being chosen is a great honour and is something I have wanted to do since joining the Scouts. We will make part of over 40,000 from 167 countries across the world, recommending Bedfordshire and Biggleswade Scouting.
Being selected to go to the World Scout Jamboree gives all 4 of us the opportunity to promote Scouting and its values to the people of Biggleswade. An important part of attending a jamboree is sharing and experiencing with others of our community. We'll be able to share our experiences with our fellow explorers, Scouts, Cubs and Beaver groups and other people within our community. We will travel to a completely different part of the world to meet other Scouts from other countries. We hope that by sharing our experiences, we can inspire the next generation of Biggleswade Scouts, but to do this, we need your support.
In order for us to be able to take part in this fantastic opportunity, we need to raise around £4,000 per person, which is a lot of money, I know. We have a number of fundraising events planned for the year, including Mother's Day afternoon tea, bake sales, and a Father's Day event and a jumble sale, but these will not raise the entire amount needed for this once-in-a-lifetime trip. Therefore, I'm here before you today to ask for your support. Please will you consider helping us with a donation to support the Biggleswade unit members with funding to represent our town group.
Thank you for listening and we hope you'll consider our request, which would mean so much to all of us.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak? Nick? Yeah,
so it's not just going to Korea for a holiday. Over the next 18 months, my group of 36, my name's Nick and I'm the unit leader for the Bedfordshire unit of the Jamboree contingent, UK contingent. 36 young people have been selected from the whole of the county, of which 15 from the Biggleswade area of scouting have been selected and 4 of them are from Biggleswade Town Scouts itself. It's not a holiday, this has been alluded to, it's the largest educational event in the world. 40,000 people, 167 countries. It's in August 2023, and between now and then they need to raise the money and they will self-fund this. So throughout the whole process, they will discover entrepreneurship, they will learn self-discipline, fundraising skills, teamwork, leadership. At the event itself, they will make lifelong friends and they'll continue the 100-year tradition, because it's the 100-year anniversary of the Jamboree, of then passing that information on to the next tranche of Jamboree attendees, 2027 for Poland. So it is not a holiday at all, and they will work darn hard to get all of the money that they need to attend this event. So any support that you can offer, I know they appreciate.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other members of the public wishing to speak at this point? Nope. Okay, then we move on to the next item, which is the minutes and recommendations of meetings. So I'll go through the minutes of the meeting of the 19th of October. Firstly, for accuracy. So anything on page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9. Okay, can I have a proposer to accept those then, please? Thank you, Councillor Russell, seconded Councillor Strawn, all in favour? Thank you very much. So we move on to matters arising. So on page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9. Okay, so then we move on then to item 6, items for consideration. So item 6A is the grants for 2022-23. Before we move on to considering them, does any of the officers want to give an introduction to this or clarify the funds available for this round of applications?
Hello, I'm Wilma. I'm Head of Finance. The funds available for disbursement for the whole of 22-23 for grants is 18,767. So we have a grant application for 40,585. So I just want you guys to be aware of that we have more applications than our available funds. So we would need to make some hard decisions tonight. Thank you.
I did have in around the question I asked earlier this afternoon. So I believe there's £3,000 still available in this year's budget. Is that correct? If we were to spend that this year?
If you were to spend that this year, it's correct, but we can carry it over.
Yeah. Okay. So we could bring deal with some of these early this year and still have the 18,000 next year if we chose to do so.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Russell.
Could you clarify? I didn't hear the
Yeah.
amount that we.
So we've got, in addition to the £18,767 budget that we've got for 22-23, we also have about £3,100 of the 21-22 budget, which has not yet been spent, but is included in the outturn prediction for the year. So we are able to spend that 3,000 if we spend it within this year without impacting on the later decisions we'll make this evening.
And just for clarity, this is the first round of grant applications, right? So at some come June or July or whenever the second round is, we still need to leave potentially some in the budget, but that's up to us.
That's correct.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So I guess the way we normally do this is we go through each application and I suggest we do that if we can keep a record of what we are proposing, and then at the end, before we finalise it, we can check how much we've said we'll give in case we've gone too far. Okay, so we'll start at the, yes.
Sorry, I should come in. We've got pre-agreed grant applications that are referred to, which is some 13,500. Is that included?
That's excluded from the 18,000.
Just No, I was hoping it was, but I just want to make quite clear. So it's the 40,000 at the top that we're.
Yeah, so it's the 40,000 but we've only got 18,700 plus the 3,000 for this year. So we've got about 21,000 in total, but we also need to consider some of that will be needed for the second round of grants later in the year. Yes.
It's just a matter of course. So obviously members will be aware that they will have received a hefty pack of information that gives a contextual background to each application. So I hope that you've been able to take advantage of that reading before deliberating on your decision. Thank you.
Councillor Knight.
Probably a slightly petty point of order, just making the observation that we're considering this year's grants or next year's grants against the budget figure that we haven't actually agreed yet, because that's later in the agenda. So just a point of note.
Indeed. Yeah. So we will start at the top then with grant application 1, which is First Biggleswade Rainbows. Any comments or proposals? Councillor Russell.
Move that we give them the money they asked for, the 14850.
Okay, any comments to Councillor Strawn?
Yes, my comment is we've got to effectively agree a 50% reduction on those monies being asked for. And I'm not sure that we could really be looking at giving 100% for everybody. I know it's only a comparatively small sum, but we've got some quite substantial sums coming forward, which may have an impact or may not. But I'm just very concerned if we're offering 100% at the first stage. I was going to suggest 50, simply because I felt that that was an acknowledgement. But we haven't got a bottomless pit of money at this, and if we've got to save 20-odd thousand, we've got to start somewhere. That's my observation. It's nothing. I've got a whole list of suggested reductions, quite frankly. So I have got concerns here.
Okay, Councillor Russell, you wanted to come back?
Yes, just to say that we have some grants here that aren't eligible. And so those would be taken out anyway. So I think we should go through and say what we think we should do. And then if we're over the total or over the amount we think we should spend for that first phase, then I think we should go back and look at a possible percentage reduction.
Okay, so we have a proposal that's been seconded. Any further comments on that one? All in favour of that amount then? Okay. So then we move on to the second one, which is for the Scout Jamboree contingent. As I said, I've got a interest on this, so I won't speak to this one or vote, but any comments?
So the figure in front of us is, so we've just had, it's a £4,000 per person for 4, so that would be 16,000 in total. The number I have in front of me is £7,500 on the sheet. Can I suggest we come back to this one because this is quite a large chunk?
Okay, and Councillor Strawn, did you want to?
I have no difficulty with coming back to it. The observation I was going to make is that it's not payable in full, effectively, until the next financial year after this coming financial year. So we might be able to look at phasing it into 2 payments if we were minded to make a payment. But that was a constructive way of looking at it.
Okay, we can come back to that one then, if that's members' feeling. Item 3 then, the carnival. Councillor Russell.
Well, with the carnival, I think we can give quite a lot of support in kind with the kind of things that they need doing, like road closures and that. So I would suggest that we put this down to 500, but give them as much support as we can in kind.
Councillor Strawn.
Seconded on very much the basis I'd hope we would support in kind as much as more than in finance, if possible.
Okay, any other comments? All in favour of that then, £500? Yep. Okay, the next one is Biggleswade Community Safety Group. Councillor Russell.
The community safety group have given a lot of help to the council and to the community in various events, and I think we should try to give them the full 800 that they've asked for.
Seconded by councillor Knight. Any other comments? All in favour of 800 then? Carried. Next one is Crab Lane Railway Embankment. Councillor Strawn.
Move this in full. It's something we've supported regularly over many years, and it's not a massive amount, notwithstanding comments made previously.
Okay. Any seconded? Yeah. All in favour? Thank you. Next one is the Biggleswade First Aid Club. Councillor Russell.
Again, we've supported this over many years, and it's used to support first aid training through St John's for various groups in the town over the years.
So that's moved. Anyone seconded? Councillor Knight. All in favour? Thank you. The next one is the Biggleswade Good Neighbours. Councillor
I
Page.
propose we give them the full amount there. They do a huge amount, and they have done through the pandemic in particular. So we've been long-time supporters of them. We know where the money goes. I think we should support this.
Okay. Seconded. All in favour? Thank you. Next one is Biggleswade History Society. Councillor Russell.
Again, they've supported us in a lot of what we do. They were very supportive and in aspects of the neighbourhood plan in the last 12, 18 months. So I would like to think that we can support this in full.
Okay. Seconded. There is it. Councillor Knight. Any other comments? All in favour then? Yeah, thank you. Next one is the Sea Cadets. Councillor Fage.
Yeah, I think we should support them a little. I have a few questions over what some of the money might go towards, I guess, in terms of proper value to the community. So, look, the Air Cadets are asking for £1,000. I think £1,000 would be fair for the Sea Cadets as well, given that we're not, given that we have a very tight budget here. So I'd like to propose that we give them £1,000. I don't want to jump the gun on the Air Cadets, but that you can wait for my proposal on that one. But £1,000 for the Sea Cadets, I think, is fair.
Okay. Councillor Storm. Okay. Any other comments? All in favour then? Thank you. Next one is Biggleswade Sports. Councillor Page.
Yeah, I think we've been long-time supporters of this as well, haven't we? And we know where the money goes. We know what they do, and we know that they're reliant on us for our support every year. So I think we should support this in full.
Okay. Anyone seconding? Councillor Knight. All in favour? Yep, that's carried. The next one is Biggleswade Town Cricket. Councillor Russell.
I think we should not determine on this at the moment, because what they're asking for is the building, which is actually owned by this council, and I think we need to work with the cricket club and sort out what it is that needs to happen to the building. So I would suggest that we're going to be supporting them in other ways rather than through this grant.
Okay. 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 Any other comments? Are you trying to? Yep.
Only to slightly elaborate on what Councillor Russell's been saying. This will be part of the capital assets review that the council will be doing. And as we know, we need to properly reflect on any maintenance related issues and support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is number 12, which is BRCC and King's Corner. Councillor Russell.
This is a great new initiative for the town between BRCC and the Baptist Church. It's been very useful for people in the pandemic, and I think it'll continue to be. And it's on King's Reach, so it's in a new part of town where there aren't many other facilities. So if we possibly can, I think we should give them the amount that they ask for.
Have a seconder, councillor Albone. Any other comments? All in favour then? Yep. Thank you. The next one is carers in Bedfordshire. Councillor Fage.
Yeah, so this is a tricky one because we know that these sort of charities have been under a huge amount of pressure with the pandemic and haven't received perhaps as much support as they might have needed in order to keep their full services going. It's a very tricky one, but I see that Keach Hospice are asking for £1,000. Sue Ryder have asked for a bit more than that, but they've said that anything is that they'd be grateful for, and I think carers in Bedfordshire would probably approach that in a similar way. So I'd be tempted to give each of them £1,000 out of fairness, and keep it there, because, you know, as I say, we need to get 40,000 down to below to around 18. So I'd probably propose £1,000 for them.
Okay. Do you have a seconder?
Seconded.
Councillor Knight, any comments? All in favour then? Okay, moves on to the next one, which is Sue Ryder.
Move £1,000.
Okay. Any seconder? Yeah. And all in favour? I think everyone's tried to second it, so that'll be a yes. Biggles FM.
Again, we've been, so this is a very long-standing relationship we have. They do a huge amount for us, actually, they publicise the neighbourhood plan, which has helped us get the number of responses that we have, and they've also very generously supported the Biggleswade light switch on for many years. So we'd be a little bit lost without them. They ask for the same amount every year to support their services, so I'd like to propose the full amount.
Seconded by Councillor Knight. All in favour? Okay, thank you. Next one is 16 year training corps. I'll go straight to Councillor Fage on that one.
Oh, I was going to propose £1,000 based on what we're given to the Sea Cadets. I was wondering whether we might have a little tally up to see where we're at in terms of cost. 11,000. Sorry, 194. Okay. And 2 pence. 32. Oh, okay, 32. All right, it's even tighter than I thought then. 2 pence.
Okay. Was that seconded for the cadets, and all in favour? Yep, thank you. So the next one was the Citizens Advice Bureau.
I'd be tempted to come back to this one as well. I'm looking at some of the others that we still have to look at, which I suspect might be perhaps a bit more pressing. I don't know what views others have on the Citizens Advice Bureau. I'm not overly familiar with their services, although they are connected to BRCC, who we're close to.
Councillor Albone.
I noticed we didn't support them last year, but we have supported them a number of years previously. We didn't at one time because they got more funding from Central Mid Bedfordshire, probably at the time, Central Bedfordshire, but that funding has dried up a little, and we have stepped in to some extent. So I would like to see us continue to support them. As far as the amount, well, I'll try it out. I'll move that we give them what they asked for, £1,000.
Councillor Russell.
I note from the papers that the service that they want to give is the equivalent of the community agent who we already support, is included in our grant giving. So I've got a lot of sympathy with what Councillor Alban's saying, but I would suggest we reduce it to 500 till we see where we go with this.
Okay. So is that a seconding of 500 then if he accepts the amendment, Councillor Russell? So everyone happy with 500 for that one? Okay. The next one is 18 Foment Talk CIC. Councillor Fage.
I'll be the boogeyman then. So I don't think this is what the grants that we're trying to give to our community should really be aimed at. community interest company and, you know, covering the cost, essentially paying the salary, is how I interpreted what was in front of us. And I don't think that is the best use of over £3,000. So I'd like to propose 0 for this one, unfortunately.
Seconded. All in favour of that? Okay. Brings us on to 19 Ival Flicks. Councillor Russell.
Well, again, we've regularly supported. It's a small amount, and they do a lot for older people in the town in what they do, particularly older people.
Okay. So is that a proposal for the full amount? Is that seconded?
Yep.
Councillor Storm, all in favour? Thank you. The next one is East Beds Community Bus Limited. So that's the Ival Sprinter. Councillor Bond.
We've supported them for many years. We also contributed when they replaced their bus, I think it was about 10 years ago. I understand this is a contribution towards replacement of the bus. I'd like to propose that we give them the 500 in full. They're very helpful to Biggleswade and to our residents.
The seconder for that, Councillor Knight, all in favour? Thank you. Next one is the Keach Hospice, Councillor Fage.
Leave £1,000.
Is that seconded? Councillor Knight, all in favour? Thank you. So the train at Trinity Model Railway, item 22. Councillor Fage.
I don't think we've quite got enough information here to be able to commit to this amount of money, to £200. Apparently it's for charity, not sure which ones. Don't really have a lot of information about the publicity strategy for this. And whilst we might wish them well and perhaps we could help out a bit on social media, which doesn't cost us anything, I don't think we should be committing £200 to this, in my view.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Councillor Russell, all in favour of nothing for that one then? Okay. The next one is the Biggleswade District Handicap Swimming Club.
With the full amount.
Seconded, and yeah, all in favour? Thank you. The next one is the Royal British Legion. Councillor Russell.
They talk in the papers, they recognise the way that the Town Council and the British Legion work together, and I wonder whether this can be dealt with offline and see how we might help them to achieve what they're trying to achieve, rather than giving them a grant, particularly of this size. So I'd like to propose that we work with the British Legion to try and establish exactly what they want to do and how we might help facilitate it, rather than giving them the grant.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Albone, all in favour of that then? Thank you. Next one is Central Bedfordshire Council for the library. I think I know where this is going. Is that a proposal of 0, Councillor Russell?
I don't think it's enough.
That's seconded by everyone else. All in favour then? Yeah, okay. So next one is 26, the Magpus Ambulance. Councillor Russell.
Give them as asked,
Okay.
the air ambulance.
Seconded, so that's £500 for the air ambulance, all in favour? Yeah. Which brings us back to the Need project. Councillor Russell.
This is quite a well-established local charity now based in Stopfold, but it does benefit people in Biggleswade who find themselves in difficulties. So I think if we can, we should give them the 500 that they've asked for.
Is that seconded? Councillor Fage, all in favour? Yeah. So then the Joneses Fitness. Councillor Russell.
We don't normally give to businesses, and this is a business. We are well aware of what's being proposed by Jones as far as a possible event in the town. And again, the Town Council will be working with them. And I think that's how we should support Jones, rather than with money.
Seconded. All in favour of that? So that's 0 for Jones. And then the final one on here is respite at home.
They do, they do a huge amount for a lot of families who find life very, very difficult. So I think we should support the £700.
Okay, is that seconded? All in favour? Okay. That's passed. Can we have the total, please? 94.
Sorry, 15,894.
Okay, so by my calculations, if we were to spend 3,100 of that in this financial year, that would mean we would spend 12,790 of the 18,767 that we've got for next year. So that would leave us about 6,000 for the second round of grant applications. But we do also have to, we did say we'd go back to the Scouts one. So any comments on the Scouts one? Councillor Russell.
I think perhaps we should give a token amount. We've got another round to look at later in the year, and I understand that there would be the possibility of another application next year when we see how things are going. I mean, I think it's a shame because we're very tight this year, but I think we should make a small grant now and see where we can go. I don't know what colleagues think. 750, something like that.
Councillor Bond.
I agree, but also I'd be interested if it comes back next year to know how they've got on regarding their own other fundraising.
Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Strong?
I would have gone a little bit higher in this current year, but I think the fact is it's not needed finally until to 23-24 in terms of our financial year. And in view of our budgeting situation at the moment, I think it's prudent to give something at the moment, and I would be minded that we would then review it again at the next round, and again if there's an application into the next year, then at least we can balance the payments rather than trying to do it all in one go, which I think would be totally wrong in our current financial situation. But we need to support it, but we've got to be sensible.
Okay, so we've got a proposal of 750. Is that, has someone seconded that? Councillor Knight, all in favour of that then? Okay, thank you. Okay.
May I make just a couple of remarks?
You may.
Thank you. So just a couple of things to note from for the staff. So there were a number of items which the response isn't no, but it's a we'll need to follow up in a different way. So I think those were Biggleswade Cricket, the Royal British Legion, Jones Fitness, and potentially the model railway people, perhaps helping them with some social media stuff. Perhaps something just to keep tabs on as well, just out of politeness, to see which of the recipients of the grants send thank you letters. Maybe that would, I'm just thinking if budgets are tight in future years, it's something that might sway us at some point in the future. I don't know, I couldn't possibly be come to a predisposition on that. But I just wanted to make those couple of points because I think they're quite important.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So that moves us on to the next item on the agenda. Just need to find it, which is the item 6B, the interim internal audit report. Did an officer want to introduce that? Or?
Thank you. There are three internal audit reports that we are required to undertake in each financial year. This is the first one that our internal auditors have done. And this is their report. They will come back again in February and then again at the year end, right, at which they will give their final report, which will go into our AGAR report.
Okay, so anyone want to make a proposal? Councillor Russell.
I was just going to say it's a good report, nothing to concern ourselves about at this point. So I just move that we accept the report and thank the staff for doing what they do.
Okay,
Seconded.
seconded. All in favour of that? Thank you very much. Move on to the next item then, which is the annual fees and charges review.
I did declare a pecuniary interest. Do you need to leave at any point? As I did
I'll take advice from the clerk as an allotment holder. I think it's okay, yeah. Okay, so does anyone want to make any comments or proposals at this point? Any officer need to introduce it?
This year's fees and charges report has been done, taking into consideration the real recommendations and other requests from the council, and to make sure that we stay competitive, but at the same time provide the service that value for money for our residents. So I'm hoping you've had a chance to look at it and happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clark?
I just add to that. So the council's overall objective is to be less reliant on its precept going forward. And in this report, there are two main points of reference. The first one is as part of a revenue income optimization project, in other words, to reflect on our practices and customs and practice. The council has considered what other local councils of varying different types charge for the same service, and we've reflected on that in some detail. So the recommendations in this report are either one of two things, or one of three things. One, there is no change. Two, there is a change based on CPI. Or three, there is a change to be consistent and fair and comparative with other councils' charges for the same services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So there's quite a lot of detail here. So may I suggest we take it in the order of the summary, one topic at a time, and maybe start with market fees?
Okay.
Could I comment on that then? So in terms of the market fees that were included in the pack, I did identify a couple of inaccuracies in relation or compared to the current pricing that was implemented in August of last year, where we returned the market fees back to their pre-pandemic levels, which was widely seen by market traders as a rise, although that's somewhat inaccurate. So I would like to propose that we actually maintain market fees as they are, and I asked for one of the assistants to kindly print off the current fees, which should have been on all of our tables. And to, rather than commit to increasing them next year, I don't think we need to make that commitment a year in advance, commit to review them in a year's time alongside all of the other fees and charges.
I think the page he's referring to is a paper that's a single paper on each person's desk.
Yeah,
thank you.
so everyone should have received this when they came in. It was a separate piece, yeah.
So those are the current.
So these are the current fees that are proposed to be maintained.
I'll second that,
Okay.
and that we review the following year, next year.
Yeah, okay, councillor Strong.
Possibly not for this particular committee, but I do have some concerns on the fees in one respect, particularly for a rent of a pitch larger than a double. It has no maximum size to that, and I think that there should be, under town centre management, if I may suggest to the chairman of that committee, that is reviewed, because it just seems to me to be something that somebody could have theoretically a double pitch for an extra £5, which doesn't seem to me to be equitable for anybody, and it can overtake the market. So I'm quite happy to go, and provided that the chairman of that committee could take that on board and review it for at least the next financial year, if not the current one.
Councillor Knight, can you confirm you'll do that?
So I think this is something we have visited quite recently, but I'm certainly happy to take that on board next time we review the market policy, whenever that is.
Okay, so we've got that seconded, councillor Page.
Yeah, so just for my understanding, so rent of stall, and so I'm 3 lines up from the bottom on the first table. So rent of stall and table additional to rent of pitch. Is this hinting at, is this at gazebos? Is this hinting at gazebos? Okay, I think we need to remove the bit about size 10 by 10, because we now have gazebos which are larger than that. It's the same manpower to put up a gazebo which is slightly larger than 10 by 10. So I think we just strike 10 by 10, and if they want a gazebo, say which size, pay us 20 quid, you can have one. That's basically what that's trying to say.
Councillor Knight, we accept that
I
amendment.
would agree with that, and I'd prefer the word stall to be replaced with the word gazebo. But you're right, we've taken delivery of the new gazebos that are more efficient to put up, so we can put them up now with a lot less labour.
Okay, so are you happy with that as seconder? Yeah. So the proposal is to accept the fees as is for the next financial year, with the slight modification to change stall to gazebo and to remove the size limit for the gazebos. All in favour of that? Okay, so that's that one. So we move on to item 2 on that summary then, which was around the A boards. Did anyone want to comment on that?
Okay, so I'll make a general point. So I guess when you price something, you have to consider whether you price at cost plus or market-based pricing. And as a town council, rather than a business, I think we have to aim to price at cost plus. I'm very reluctant to put any financial burden on local businesses, given the number of vacant premises seems to be increasing, and I think we need to be seen to encourage business. And I think the positive revenue impact here is very minor. I would also hope that the administrative burden of issuing these is less than £100. So I would actually propose that we continue not charging for A-boards.
Okay. Seconded. All in favour, or any comments on that first? All in favour? Okay. Which moves us on to the cemeteries proposals. Any comments on the cemeteries? Councillor Fage.
I propose that we accept what's in front of us. I think these are not easy decisions, but if we want our cemeteries to be, quality cemeteries that people, I was going to say people want to be buried in, but that's a really crass way of putting it. No, yeah, I would. No, I could make a joke, but I'm not going to. Look, I think if we want our cemeteries to be good, then we need to make sure that the income is there in order to support their maintenance properly. Whatever people have paid in the past have been paid in the past, but I think these are fair compared to, very, very fair compared to what other towns and villages are charging. So I move the whole amount.
Okay, that's seconded. Any other comments? All in favour of that then? Okay, which brings us on to the allotments. So as a reminder, these are a year in advance to come into effect in September 2023. Councillor Knight.
So this is really difficult. So I know one thing that we have asked about, and we haven't had a chance to receive it yet, really is to actually understand the cost of providing some of these services. And it's really not clear to me, if we go for the cost plus model, what the cost is of providing an allotment. However, we do know there's a big backlog. And we do know we need to look to increase provision, and we do know that they currently are a cost. So I broadly support, although it's painful, the principle of increasing the charges. The thing that worries me a little bit here is the ratio between the small plot and the large plot, because the cost of a large plot now seems to be significantly higher than the cost of a small plot. And I'm not sure there's a good justification for that. So painful though it is, I actually wonder whether we should increase the price of a small plot to something like £65, so it's more in proportion to the cost of a large plot. Otherwise, frankly, what's to stop someone saying, can I have 2 small plots next to each other, please?
Okay. Councillor Strong.
I just think the increase is slightly excessive into not the immediate one, but the next year one. I think that is excessive. It's over 100%. And as has just been pointed out, a large plot is twice the size of a small plot, yet the charge is more than twice the charge. That to me is totally nonsensical. If it had been 112, I could have understood the logic behind it, but to make it a greater sum, I'd say is illogical. It would have been gone in the reverse direction in normal scale. So I've got reservations on this, but I think the increase for 23-24 is personally too high a percentage. But equally, we would be looking at that fee next year anyway.
No, we're looking at that tonight.
Well,
we've got to look at that a year in advance, so we are looking at that tonight.
Well,
the 22-23 one's already confirmed that we confirmed last year.
Yeah. So if we've got to deal with it tonight, I think that's too big an increase. And I won't be supporting that level of increase for 23-24.
Okay, so we have a proposal to increase for 23-24 the small plot to 65 and a large plot to 115, which has been seconded. Have we got any other comments before we vote on that? Councillor Russell.
Just to say that we've already improved the allotments a large amount in the last little while. We've dealt with a lot of the problems that we've had there, and we are hoping to make further improvements in the next year to 18 months to the allotments. And as Councillor Knight said, we do have a backlog of something like 70 people wanting allotments. So I really think that we do need to do this, and that will help us to do the things that we want to make the allotment site even better.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Tarrant?
Just to reiterate that obviously we're in the process of trying to expand our offer and looking at all alternatives as per members' requests. One of those options may require the council to purchase some land. And as Councillor Russell was highlighting, last time I looked at this, I think there were 74 people waiting for allotments. We're legally required to do this. It's by statute. Anything greater than 5, we should be a matter of concern. And this is a significant matter of concern. So it will require investment in the future.
Thank you. So we have a proposal that's been seconded. All in favour of that? Any against? One against. Abstentions? 1 abstention. So that's carried. Thank you. Which brings us on to the Orchard Centre fees. Anyone wish to make proposal or comments on that? Councillor Knight.
Okay, a very general point. I haven't really structured this very clearly in my own mind. I'm not entirely comfortable with the split between corporate and non-corporate and exactly how you define those two. So I don't know if any officers can offer any clarity on that. I was wondering whether it would be better to have a split thinking about community groups or activity groups as opposed to, so it's more to my mind who is participating in the event than the legal entity that the host happens to have. And I was wondering if there's a better way of wording that perhaps.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, can I make some general points and sort of sweep up Councillor Knight's answer in what I'm trying to say?
Please do.
Members will have seen that you have a revised version of my original report on the Orchard Centre, and it concentrates on a lot of anomalies relating to fees, which is why we have sort of restructured. Particularly, just draw your attention that we would like to move, if members are agreeable, to an hourly rate basis for the smaller training room, and also to sort of bring in some consistency for reasons which I'll explain later if members want me to, in terms of discounts and so forth. The word corporate and non-corporate in a way is a sort of working title. I have to say that because there is still some work to be done, and hoping members will have a look through the report that you're on your agenda later. The growth in usage most recently has been a considerable upsurge in demand from what I would call large organisations. We have had in the recent past the Co-op using us for various meetings and recruitment drives. We have British Gas now with management meetings taking place. For a while we've had Jordans who have used it for a number of activities, including sort of test cooking and so forth, and they've used the kitchen and the training room. Also, I mean, and again, this is quite interesting, and I think it sort of addresses the point that Councillor Knight has raised. We do have sort of various branches of the NHS, which although it's a large organisation and you could call it corporate, it's very much public sector. And of course, at the moment, a lot of people's attention is drawn to the activities of the NHS because of the COVID situation. So the word corporate and non-corporate, I think it's a working title, and we wanted to try as far as possible to encapsulate the growth in the large business sector, the PLCs and perhaps larger private limited companies. We have a working definition, but we don't know whether it's right. I think we'll discuss this.
Councillor Knight, I think you wanted to come back.
I've thought of two options. So I think option one, which is my preferred, is to split them into standard. So you replace that corporate with standard, and then the second one, non-corporate, becomes community activities. So, you know, baby activities, sporting activities would come under that community activity category. If for some reason officers feel that isn't going to be specific enough, the other option would be to do it based on number of employees. So the higher charges would apply to organisations with more than 50 employees, perhaps.
Councillor Russell.
I support Councillor Knight's first definitions of standard and then something for community activities, because we differentiate charities, but we do have community activities, various activities for children and for adults like karate, where we wouldn't want to charge the same as a full standard charge. So I think if those aren't the right words, then officers need to come up with the right words. But the way that Councillor Knight is talking about, that it's community activities, things where people can come along and take part, as opposed to a private activity, which is a training session for a company or, you know, meetings or whatever. So I would support what Councillor Knight's proposed there.
Okay, Councillor Fage.
Okay, so I agree with what Councillor Knight said about standard versus community. However, I don't think we should be implementing this until we have a policy which properly backs up what our position is around each of those definitions, because otherwise we're exposing ourselves to potential challenges over, oh, well, no, we feel like we fit into your brief definition of community, which hasn't really been approved by council. So I would suggest, I think what is suggested in terms of charges are fine. However, we need a policy in place before we start charging on the standard rate. I think we should keep everything at the community activity rate for now. And then as and when we get a policy in place, we can implement the standard charges for those organisations that might fall under that remit. And the reason I put it that way round is because if we were to just go with standard for everything, that'd mean some of our regular hirers having a over 50% increase in price, which would be unreasonable. So I don't know whether Councillor Knight, have you made a proposal? But I do think we need to properly record that we need a policy for this before we introduce these standard charges. Otherwise, I think it's all right.
So just to paraphrase all of this then, and confirm I'm correct. So the proposal is to adopt these charges, but rename the corporate standard charges and the non-corporate as community activity charges. And that before these are implemented on the 1st of April 2022, we must implement and approve the policy to support them.
Yeah, well, we don't start charging.
Or we don't charge the standard rate until we have done so.
Correct.
Yeah. One thing I would like to just comment on, if you accept this in as well, is the reduction for local charities. I believe it's in the actually in the Auction Centre report later on that should again refer to charities and not-for-profits for the benefit of residents of Biggleswade, not ones that are necessarily based in Biggleswade themselves, aligned with our market policy for charity stalls. So we can make that amendment as well.
There we go.
And Wilma.
Thank you. I just want to go back to sorry.
Sorry, Councillor.
Oh, have you sorry? I
You go
hadn't
first,
noticed.
please.
Go on, Councillor.
I was going to say something before Grant made a suggestion, Councillor Page made a suggestion. So in terms of dividing bookings up into what's here in the paper, there's corporate and non-corporate. There are large employers who would be classified as corporate in this, but that includes, as was referred to earlier, NHS organisations. The blood transfusion service goes in there. Now, do we want to put those in the corporate bracket, or do we want to make them in a separate bracket where we can vary the charges for them? So I support what Councillor Fraser was saying, that we do need a policy which clearly differentiates between these categories.
I think the proposal, as you say, addresses that through doing the policy in terms of those items. Okay, so.
Thank you. I just want to say we did deliberate, Philip and myself, on all the proposals that you've suggested. And we did agree with Councillor Russell about the fact that how do we categorize somebody to standard and community and what grounds, and the fact that there was the need for the policy. And considering the fact that we had to present this to council, we went with corporate and non-corporate, defining corporate as companies with more than 50 employees. Because what we didn't want to do is to ostracize the small businesses that does this for the benefit of the community. But I took out that definition from it last minute, because I'm thinking, what if there is a business that's only 10 of them, but they have the muscles to actually, or capacity to actually be classified as corporate? So we've made this decision.
Yeah, I think that's going to be covered by the proposal in that we need to put a policy in place.
So are we saying we don't take this until the policy comes to play? Or
so the proposal is, if it's passed in a moment, that we adopt these prices, but renaming the corporate charge as the standard charge and renaming the non-corporate charge as a community activity charge, but the higher level charge, which will become the standard charge, will not come into effect until such time as we have approved a policy to define what the differences are. Ideally, that will be by the 1st of April, so that we can bring them in on the 1st of April. Okay, I think that's clear. Any further comments before we vote?
I think you're also proposing that we redefine the local charity.
Yes, and then the redefinition of the local charity to be of charities and non-profit organisations for the benefit of people of Biggleswade rather than necessarily based in Biggleswade. Yes, Councillor Storm.
Surely all this will be covered by when we do the policy, because we need to get the definitions clear in the policy. Until we've done that, debating whether it's big or not, because a corporate business, the NHS, I think, has got more than 50 employees. So that will be exactly standard rate regardless. So
that level of detail, but the levels are being approved now pending the policy.
That's why we need the policy. Yeah. So we're actually quite clear on who's caught by what provisions.
Yeah. Okay, so all in favour of that then? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. And then sports facilities. I think that's the final one, isn't it? So I think this proposal is just an inflation increase. Yeah, Councillor Strong.
The observation I have, I'd prefer to see figures rounded rather than to 0.38 and 0.63, etc. Sometimes it just looks nitpicking. I wrote a slightly larger increase with a rounded figure would make more sense to me, but that's just a personal observation, and I bow to superior knowledge.
Councillor Fage.
Just out of curiosity, were these benchmarked against other similar facilities in the area? Was these part of the RIA?
Every single one of them was.
Okay, they were, and so presumably we're roughly in line with what other areas are charging.
We went in based on the real presentation that we did. Members have expressed the desire to look towards we look at Sheffield, we look at Bedford, we looked at Stevenage and some other bits, but the total collection of data was about 10 surrounding towns near you. And based on that, we came to an average of that. But even that, after doing that exercise, you're still the lowest, even as an average.
Can I be
Mr.
clear
Chairman.
about that? Would you mind? Is that all right? Yeah. I mean, I think we reiterate what's in the report. The report's quite clear. We are currently charging the lowest compared with the neighbouring towns. Yep. We're currently charging the lowest on page 20.
Yes, I think the proposal from officers is that we do this inflationary increase this year with a view to implement recommendations from the Rio the following year, which would increase further.
Right, okay. Sorry, I missed that rather obvious thing on page 20. It was spelled out quite clearly. I beg your pardon. Sorry.
Okay. Councillor Russell.
I have a lot of sympathy with what councillor Strawn said. Can we not have 50 pence or a pound rather than these figures, which are likely to go wrong when somebody's dealing with them, either with the charging or the writing of a cheque or whatever? Can we just round them to the nearest 50, please?
So can someone propose the numbers to you to put in, then we'll, so
I'll do
everyone's clear. Go.
Okay, I'm going down the 2022-23. I'm on page 27. So £13.66 becomes £14. Are we okay with this? Shout if not. £34.68 becomes £35. £57.80 becomes £58. No charges remain as no charges. £3.15 becomes £3. £52.54 becomes £53, and £26.27 becomes, I don't know, I'm feeling generous, £26.
So I guess the only one I would question on that would be the first bowling one, which you're keeping flat rather than increasing, whereas everything else has increased.
Bowling one. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but if everyone's happy with that, that's fine. And then I guess for the Grove Road Bowls Club, that would be just 2,900 flat, and the and likewise for the First Meadow. Okay.
Maybe we should do maybe we should do more than £3 per person per hour. I don't know how many people use it, but it doesn't seem to make sense to keep it flat. I know the costs associated with this facility are quite extensive, so no, £3.50. £3.50.
Okay. That's a proposal. Is that so? We've got going down 14, 35, 58, no charge, £3.50, 53, 26, 2,900, 2,900. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Knight. All in favour? Any objections? Okay. Carried. Thank you. I think that is everything on the fees and charges, unless anyone's got any other comments. Councillor Fage.
I do have a comment, and I should just mention I have a pecuniary interest in this, but I'm not sure why we're not considering residents and workers parking permits. They are fees, in the same way that some of the things which are under PLOS's remit we are considering today as fees. So I know it's normally a conversation for TCM, but I don't know why we haven't discussed that. And actually, it might be historic. I'm not sure we ever have. I think I'm still paying the same for my parking permit as 3 years ago. Hence, sort of why I raise it.
Yeah. so I mean, I see Councillor Knight's waiting to come in. I think my comment will be, of course, for the actual parking fees in terms of at the machines for regular parkers, we are bound by parking orders, and so it's a more laborious process. I don't believe that we've got the same restrictions for the permits, so maybe they should come here in future. But Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So I was just going to say, really, I think we did indicate that we didn't want to change parking charges this year. So I expect that is the resolution that officers have followed. Maybe there's some ambiguity there about whether that includes parking permits, but I can imagine that's why this is the situation.
Just saying for the record, you don't have to minute this, but actually I think I've got a pretty cushy deal. And also, particularly given, no, but seriously, I mean, our costs associated with Rose Lane have gone up. We've renewed the lease for a further 15 years, which was a superb piece of work and really important for the town, but it has come at a slightly higher price now. I think we need to think about that. There we go, no discussion for tonight.
Okay, noted. And yes.
Would you like to go to a town council meeting?
I don't, I think it's just noted in the minutes, and I think it would be considered a TCM meeting in due course, but I don't think it needs to go specifically be put onto an agenda. That was my.
I presume we can increase those charges at any time. We don't have to do that on a. There's no signage to print, is there? So we could consider it at the next TCM.
Okay. So we're on to item 6D, which is the playground strategy. I think this should be fairly straightforward. Councillor Russell.
I'm understanding from what was agreed at council last week that we've agreed the figure on here, which is a large figure of 519,000 capital investment in our play areas. Just, yeah. Sorry. Right, I'll start again. At council last week, we decided that we would put that 519,000 of capital investment through in this budget with other capital investment that we want to do. And we agreed that the first year we would spend 122,000 of that capital investment. That's been agreed by council. We also agreed that the detail of the phasing of the investment and exactly what equipment goes where would be down to PLOS. So I think this has come to this meeting for us to acknowledge that and take it forward in the budget. But we've made the basic decision at council.
Yeah, Councillor Strawn.
I think that's the case, but I was concerned there still seem to be some anomalies in the report over, e.g. the year of things being carried out, particularly with regards to Franklin's and Kitelands. It doesn't tie in with the implementation sequence that's set out later. So there are, these points were raised at the appropriate committee when we considered council when we were considering this.
Yeah.
So there are still some anomalies, but I agree with the principle of Councillor Russell was saying. We agreed it in council. The strategy is there.
I think those comments you make will be the things that would be addressed by PLOS. So I think to repeat back what I think your proposal is that we acknowledge the this report, that we are intending on planning for the 519,400 to be funded through a public works loan, and that we are planning to incorporate within the budget for the next financial year the 122,000 as proposed, with the remainder of the phasing to be fully planned based on the phasing of activities and work which PLOS will determine. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. May I propose a slight amendment, which is, that's all great, but can we in addition ask officers just to explore all possible opportunities for 106 funding? So the public works loan is our fallback position if we can't get 106 funding. We obviously shouldn't delay the initiative.
Are you happy to accept that, Councillor Russell?
Yes, I am. I mean, my understanding is that's what officers are doing anyway, but if that's part of the proposal, it will be minuted and that, you know, that we acknowledge that officers are going to be doing all that they can to get Section 106 funding from Central Bedfordshire Council.
Okay, so are we all in favour of that proposal then? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. You're always doing this after the item's been closed, Councillor Page.
I'm sorry, I'm making a habit of this. I wanted to check that it passed because my comment is fitting. So this is a really exciting piece of work. It's going to be genuinely transformational. It has, you know, we've made a big budgetary decision tonight, although we've made it quickly, but that's because a huge amount of hard work has gone on behind the scenes. Something to think about is how we communicate some of these potential changes with our residents, because this is good news that we should be trying to tell people about. So something to think about there.
I'm going to keep it very short, but I agree with what Councillor Fade has said, and obviously members are cognizant of the funding streams associated with such a significant piece of transformational change, and that we need to be very thoughtful about the overall comms connected to the funding streams which we're about to discuss.
Thank you. So we will move on then to item 6E, which is the original estimates for 22-23. Mr. Talent, did you want to introduce this or not, or Ms. Solomon?
Perhaps we'd like to give Wilma as head of finance the opportunity of beginning the conversation, but if you don't mind, Wilma, I'll do my normal thing and I'll probably interrupt you as you go, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As per the finance workshop which we held, we've had a look at the 22-23 original estimates, and unlike previous years, we've done this year's budget based on zero-based budgets, which means we stripped it off any capital or, any growth element and based it purely on the running cost of the place. And ask council to look at the growth element that they desire or want to embark on for the next 5 years. And then has given the option for council to see the knock-on effect of the growth elements they decide to go on. Based on that, we've come to 2 options, which members will be deliberating on tonight. So we've got the budget or the original estimate excluding growth. And then if we want to embark on growth, we've got 2 options to which we can support or finance this growth. So I'll leave members to ask any questions they have based on the papers that has been circulated.
Okay. Did you want to add to that at this point?
We'll just add something a little bit and then we can have the wider debate. So just to reiterate what Wilma's been saying, so we do have, I think for the first time, a zero-based budget. So effectively you start the calculations from the very beginning and you come to a sense about what the commitments are. I think it's one of the interesting challenges to discuss is growth going forward. So in other words, unplanned expenditure going forward. And officers consulted the members at a finance workshop and a number of other conversations to get some sense of direction from members about which particular areas of quite an extensive list of growth might be included. And that's an indicative sense about what members' direction might be. I think it's very helpful for members in their deliberations so that officers have had a very clear sense about what our commitments might be going forward. And I think that helps the planning process. We then obviously look for members to give us direction connected to things. And we'll also obviously want to discuss what we believe to be an adequate level of reserves. So perhaps we should have the debate and then I'll answer any questions.
Okay, so Councillor Knight.
Thank you very much. So firstly, thank you to all of the officers who have done a lot of work preparing the reports and the various pieces of information tonight. So I have a few comments, so I apologise, this will take a moment. So on the first page of the report, page 39 in the pack, I think the meeting on the 13th of December is slightly misrepresented. So my recollection is members didn't ask for an increase of 7.5%. The request that the rise be no greater than 7.5%, and I think that's an important correction to make. I only received a detailed town centre budget yesterday, and the town centre management committee hasn't had an opportunity to consider that yet. When I looked at it, it did contain some surprises. So, for example, the events budget has been cut by 2/3. Which is worrying me because this year we have the Platinum Jubilee celebration to consider. So I think that it's worth some additional scrutiny on those per committee budgets. Other line items on that budget have risen in ways that I'd like to investigate and understand in more detail. And I think that the detailed per committee budgets need to be reviewed and perhaps revised at committee level before the start of the new financial year. Of course, we know there are a lot of inflationary pressures on the cost of living for all of our residents and indeed for the council and the council staff. And I really believe it's essential that we strive to minimise the council tax burden on families. And that really means looking hard at cost and efficiency savings across the whole council budget, not just looking at the percentage increase. And I know sometimes we fall into the trap of using sort of the weekly cost numbers, which can make a large percentage increase look smaller. And I think that's a dangerous trap to fall into. If we go back to the minutes that we approved earlier, the committee's already resolved that the clerk initiate an efficiency and cost reduction project, and there's a report due in March. And I think we really need to focus every pound of our what's now quite large, sort of £1.4 million budget on delivering maximum value to the community. So that's sort of the backdrop. So I find neither of the two options we've been presented with particularly attractive, and it's certainly far higher, both of them, than I would like. However, inevitably of the two options we have, I favour the lower. So I'm going to make a proposal. So I therefore propose that we agree to the headline budget based on option 2, which is a 7.5% increase rather than the 9.25% increase to the precept, but with some additional elements to that resolution. So we ask that the cost and efficiency report the clerk is leading to identify efficiency savings of £25,000. Which would be a budget saving of around 1.5%. And if we were to find efficiency savings of that £25,000, that would avoid the need to dip into our general reserves. And I feel optimistic that a 1.5% saving should be achievable for the next year. I know we don't know exactly where that would come from yet, but that feels like a reasonable target. For comparison, I had a quick look at the CBC budget, and CBC have already identified operational savings of 2% for their next financial year. So I'm proposing that we try to find slightly less than that, which would remove that reserve impact that the option 2 would give us. And second, we review and adjust the detail of all the committee budgets before the start of the financial year to really make sure we get into that level of detail. So that concludes my proposal, and I hope someone will second it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Russell, you indicated?
I was wishing to speak, not necessarily
Okay.
second.
Okay, seconded, but then Councillor
I
Russell.
was just wanting to ask Councillor Knight what he meant by that last comment about the budget going back to committees, because once we set the precept tonight, the budget can't change. So the committees will have whatever amount is set. So could you explain?
Well,
exactly what
the
you're
precept can't change because we will have set that, but they're before the year starts. I think there is opportunity to look at the detail of the budget allocation to each of the committee areas and the line items within that budget. Because I say, I don't think they've had enough review or scrutiny yet, and I would like to dig into some of the detail, and I know members here have not had a chance to do that yet. So I think it is important that we do that, and we may end up moving some money around. We obviously can't change the overall budget, but we could, for example, I'm just going to make this up, take some away from the Christmas events to support other events, for example, or other allocations.
So to be clear, you're talking about moving it within the overall budget for that committee.
That's right, but also some of the efficiency savings would also potentially help as well.
So I think essentially the proposal is that before the start of the year, each committee or financial year, each committee will review their budget, and potentially we would need to do some veerments between budget headings to refine the budget, but not increase the overall costs and the overall quantum. Yeah. Councillor Strong.
I have concerns very much on the point that Councillor Russell's raised, because my concern was hearing Councillor Knight had only received a detailed budget in the last 24, 48 hours. I would have hoped that in normal circumstances, the committee and the committee chairman would have actually gone through this process a couple of months earlier so that it could be dealt with quite clearly in the precept. We've had a change of staff, so I can understand why it hasn't been possible this year, but that's not satisfactory. And here I'm just going to declare a non-pecuniary interest, because I am aware that this would need to be taken exempt because of some contractual issues here. that there are opportunities and in fact expectations of monies being received that may have an impact on the budget, either in terms of capital or income, which I would expect to see somewhere in the figures, which aren't shown here, may not be possible to be shown, but could have an impact on the overall budgeting process and precepting for this council. But that needs to be taken into exempt because it would be of a contractual nature.
Mr. Tarrant.
I guess my first observation, based on what Councillor Knight has been discussing, is that on page 46 of the pack, as the RFO for the council, one of my broader concerns is that there is an extensive list of known growth at the moment. The indicative figures that we've got in this report highlight some priorities that some members have suggested that we incorporate at the moment. Having said that, even below the line, when you go below the line 11 onwards, there are a number of commitments that will hit this council in the new financial year that are currently not budgeted for. And some of those figures are quite significant, or rather could be quite significant. And this is just a summary of known potential growth. So as the year goes on, and we've found that over the last year or 18 months, as we review things and we reflect on things and we learn more about our services, it's possible that there'll be additional commitments in excess of what's on page 46. I'm particularly concerned that we don't currently have an accurate assessment of what our potential maintenance costs might be going forward connected to our capital assets. That's one of the most significant challenges that keeps me awake at night in regard to what that might look like going forward. And I have no sense of that whatsoever at the moment. And I won't go through each one, but you can see there's some quite significant figures here, even in where we are at the moment. When you think about our reserve position, in the councils that I've worked at in the 40 years in local government, most councils, when they zero base a budget, have a significant reserves position in regard to their specific elements. They have a really known sense about what their growth capacity is going forward. And currently we don't. We don't have any specific reserves. We put our reserve position in regard to our general reserve at what, generally speaking, now believed to be the right approach. But I could go in length about whether I believe the now approach to be reasonable or not. So I guess one of the challenges for me as the RFO going forward really is, I think the budget's very tight. I think the budget's very tight in regard to both options on the table. And I think it could be an extremely challenging year if some of these commitments show themselves going forward. And some of these things are things that we absolutely have to do. We have to do fire precautions. We have to maintain our capital assets properly. There are various things there which are definitely most likely going to happen. Our vehicles are about to come to the end of their natural lives. These are facts. These are things that will most definitely happen. So I think it's going to be a challenging year, and it's for members to decide on what they believe to be the priorities going forward.
Okay. Councillor North.
I have two things to say. Firstly, on a sort of procedural question, really, would it not be reasonable to Councillor Knight has put forward a proposal which has been seconded to go for the 7.5 and the option 2, but rather than that, which is the proposal, would it not be reasonable to propose an amendment to that to go for option 1, which is not, is that so that the council is making a clear and specific decision not to go for option 1? That's the point I'm making. Or could we just say, well, no, we don't agree with option 2, and it's then put back to us, well, do you agree with option 1 then?
Yeah, we're making a recommendation to council. My understanding will be that if you if there's two options and a proposal is put forward to one, an amendment to put forward the other one is negating the first proposal and therefore isn't a valid amendment. So you'd have to defeat the proposal that is currently put forward and then put a new proposal to propose option one.
All right. Okay, I accept that point. Right, just looking at page 46, this is fascinating. There's many questions I could ask about this, but firstly, it's slightly surprising that there's a whole, I haven't counted them actually, but a whole list of relatively small things, some bigger than others, obviously, which are all going to happen in the next financial year, but then hardly anything in the next 5 years. I mean, is this really credible? But come this time next year, you're not going to have a whole list of relatively small things that need doing that add up in total quite a lot.
So, well, if I could comment
question.
first of all on that. So in terms of what's been included in the calculations for both the 7.5 and the 9.25% options, it goes down as far as line 10. Those items that are below line 11 and below are not included within that growth budget that's been accounted for in the proposals. And therefore, I guess the assumption for that would be that they would have to move into the future years based on that budget proposal.
Comment, Chair?
Yep.
Well,
Can I comment?
Okay.
Chair? Yeah. So firstly, just to support what Mr. Councillor Pullinger has been saying, he's right to say that. And to go back to Councillor North, this is an accurate summary of what our likely commitments are going into the new financial year. These are emerging items of growth. This is a growth position this council's never considered before. I've yet to see a growth position considered in this level of detail before. Growth is unplanned expenditure. So as you go forward, and you go forward in the next few months and the next few years, and we do the reviews that are detailed in this report, there's lots of reviews to carry on, this will change. And you'll become more aware.
So you will discover unplanned items that will fall into the 23-24 column, and the 24-25 column in 2 years' time.
This council has a variety of big projects which is about to start. The projects actually really say to us that we're keen to learn more about our potential organisation. We're keen to understand our maintenance programmes. We're keen to understand our capital maintenance programmes. The work needs to be done. When the work is done and the intelligence is known, then it will feed through into forthcoming financial years, and we will create what I would call a medium-term financial plan for the council, which it currently doesn't have.
All right, so you're admitting that these are gaps, and this is really as far as you've got to date. In effect.
I mean, if I give you an example, the capital assets plan, which we're about to review, until you do the work with the chartered surveyor and you look at your assets, which we haven't currently done, and we haven't done for many years, only then will the intelligence flow through, which will flow through into future years. Do the work, gather the intelligence, build the MTFS.
So it's relevant then that the figures that the entries for the later years is blank rather than zero.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, just going on. Public realm vehicles, £8,000 in the next financial year. I'm not sure what sort of vehicles you're going to get for £8,000 if you're saying that they are all reaching the end of the natural life.
I can easily respond to that, Councillor North. So this council does not buy its vehicles. We rent our vehicles.
Right.
This is rental costs.
Right, well, if that is so, okay, that's fine, but won't that be a recurring cost every year?
Please do.
Thank you. The reason why I'm saying 8,000 is indicative. This is a growth wish list. So once you're saying that, okay, you agree for that to happen, then the corresponding
it's built into the base budget.
It's built into the base budget for each year. So this particular paper, if you look on page 45, it tells you what we're doing out of this, the whole list here. What we're doing in 2022-23 is on page 45.
Oh, right. So these are the growth items.
For the
it's not
next,
predicted expenditure.
No. If you look on page 45,
growth.
yeah. If you
It's
look
going
on,
up by 8,000 in that year, but not by any more in future years. That's
No.
what we're saying.
No.
So the same would apply then to the £70,000.
Everything else on that paper is the
package.
growth.
Implement new salary review. That's the increase, but it's not going to increase after that.
No.
And likewise, the new information officer at £18,000. That's the increase.
Yes.
Not
and
the
then-
amount, not the expected amount of expenditure in future years.
Yes, because once you agree on a growth item from here, it will move to become an item in the normal budgets for that following, for consequent years. So if you look at page 45, a summary of what in the growth list we're having in terms of revenue expenditure is there, and that comes up to 45,000. So anything from item, as Councillor Pullinger explained to us, anything from item 11 onwards, ideally should be done in 22-23. But because we can't afford to, we would then extrapolate it in the various years based on council's desire and wish. That's why they've been color-coded into different things in terms of priority. And that's a decision council have to decide to say, put it in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, then I'll go back.
Okay, let's.
So if I can just add one thing to that. So the growth that we put in for 22-23, because a number of those items that are there for growth are one-offs, those ones that are one-offs, that element of budget will be used for future items potentially in this list or future growth in future years. The ones that are going to be ongoing costs, like the vehicles, for example, they would just be included as that amount in the base every year going forward.
So all these items, the items, the other items then, such as, you know, the boiler, for example, £1,000, rather than putting what it should be logically from what you've said, it should be minus 1,000 in the following year, because that's a.
You could potentially have a negative growth of 1,000 the following year, or you could put something else in.
You might want new radiators.
Yeah, or you could say, do one of the things lower down this list. Yeah, indeed.
So it's really, that's there, and you're saying that you're probably going to want that in future years as well, even though the boiler replacement is a one-off.
Yeah, so you'd want that 1,000 for, you'd have that 1,000 for future years for other one-off things. Yeah. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you. As a non-accountant, I'm just.
I think that's slightly rude.
Oh, sorry,
Rob.
Sorry, I thought you'd finished, Councillor North.
But some of these are some quite heavy items, and I think, I mean, it's not, it is. I don't know, not entirely, I just feel not entirely satisfactory really to have these figures sort of quoted in and shown in this way, that's all. Okay, no, all right, sorry, Rob. Right, I will leave it at that for now. All right, that's the way it's been done, so.
I'll go on to Councillor Strawn first.
Right, as a non-accountant, I think actually there is prospectively some good news in these figures, if I've understood them correctly, because 22-23, we're looking at an increase in the expenditure over the previous year for growth of 125. In 23-24, it's 123,000 increase. And then the increase is only going to be 35,000, 31,000, 30,000, etc. So that percentage-wise, we wouldn't be looking at the massive increases we're looking at the moment, year on year, because the growth is so much smaller. And I appreciate that Mr. Tarrant's going to come in and tell me in a minute that this doesn't account for other growth, but it's effectively setting the base figure for the future years. But just on that basis, there are 2 points that I'm not so sure about, and that is the loan repayment, because does the 22,000 that's been referred to as an increase in each year mean that we're going to be borrowing proportionately more each year, or is it going to be the cost that's anticipated from the Public Works Loan Board, in which case that increase of 22,000 on an annual basis is not correct, because it would be a level thing, because it had already been set, because we'd taken out the loan and the interest and the payments would have been set. So I'm unsure as to whether that's going to be an ongoing increase. And the realignment of playgrounds and the repair, I would have anticipated that on a normal basis that the repair bill would have been approximately the same each year and therefore not increasing, but it looks as though we'd effectively be paying £46,000 plus an annual maintenance over and above what we are at the moment, if that follows through. Now, I may have misinterpreted it. If there's a slight conflict there, and I may be misinterpreting it, but as I say, I'm a non-accountant, so I'm just trying to take it on a simplistic view, and please tell me I am being simple.
Yeah, Mr. Tarrant, you wanted to come back on that?
Would we like to go first?
Oh, well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to start from the beginning. In terms of the growth element per year, the bottom figure there that says 125 for 22-23 is what we aspire or decide for. But included in the budget, if you go to page 45, is out of the 125, we only included in the budget 300, because we didn't want the percentage to go up higher than what members desired or expressed. And so it means if you take the 45 out of the 125, whatever is left will shift to the next year. And we will have this conversation again next year, where you again decide what is left of the 40 is left with 80K from 22-23, and then you have 123,000 for 23-24. So you would then, I will come back to you again, putting this in a different order, and then you make a decision.
Can I interrupt? Would you mind? Just
Very
a point of
briefly.
clarity.
We need to
Point
move
of
on.
Okay, so I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier, which is there are some items below line 10 that the council might wish to implement in the next financial year. If you don't allocate a sum of money to do that, saying the obvious, you won't be able to do it. And some of those things, like vehicles that are coming to the end of their natural life, are things that perhaps you would want to try and do something about. It's not for me to say.
Okay, I'll just make a quick comment on that. But in the same way that we haven't allocated for those, and I think we indicated it the informal discussions previously that those things are things that are of a lower priority, hence the way they've been shown as a priority, which means they would be potentially moved into later years if we do decide we need to do them. But in the same way that we ultimately need to provision for what we know we're going to do, not speculatively because on things that we haven't decided we want to do, in my view, which leads to what has actually been given in the two options that are before us. So we have a proposal for the 7.5%. Are there any more comments on that proposal specifically first? Councillor Fage.
I just have one very brief comment. So inflation is at 5%. How is that reflected in the precept in terms of the percentage that we're being asked to agree this evening? And what other assumptions have any other assumptions been made around the rate of inflation?
The reason why we are not staying at the 5%, which was our previous precept, or we are now going to 7.5 or 9.10, is because we factored in inflation. So yes, it has. That is what is obviously putting us in the position where we are. If things haven't changed a lot, the percentage increase will be way below. But of course, all the prices that has been used in this agreeing this budget has put into consideration those things. Sorry, have I not?
Yeah.
So yes, it has. And if things were different from the 5.1% current inflation, I think we'll be looking at more favorable figures than what you're looking at.
So if I can comment on that from the chair. So I think with it being a zero-based budget, and in the blurb of the report, it does state that the zero-based budget did incorporate a consideration of inflationary pressures on each of those items that were looked at. It doesn't quote in the report a specific amount, but it's based on doing that calculation on each item based on the expected cost of that item, either on a contractual basis or on an expectation. What is clear in there, though, is the drivers of the growth in our operational budget that have already been baked into that, what would be the 5% increase, which is the baseline without those growth items, is primarily from the depot, which the operational costs of the new depot are not factored in to the current year's budget. An additional repairs and maintenance budget of 15,000, excuse me, I just need to get a drink. an additional repairs and maintenance budget of 15,000, which hopefully will help offset some of that, the things that haven't been done in the past, which means we've got a huge list of growth items of things like boiler repairs, because we've not necessarily kept on top of those things in the past. And then a smaller element, which is to do with some of the decisions we've made around changes in the establishment, etc. So I think that 5% increase, which is that baseline increase, is driven by both inflation and those big decisions that we've made over the last year to change our operating model in different ways. And then the difference between that 5% and either 7.5% or the 9.25% is driven by those additional growth items.
Can I just ask a question of the chair? Do you want me to pass any comment on the Hay review, or would you wish to discuss that under exempt?
I think we have informally discussed it. I don't think there's any need to consider it at this point, because in these papers it's showing as being in the following financial year in any case. So we have a proposal. It's been seconded. Are there any final comments before we move to a vote on that? Okay, so the proposal is to recommend to council that we increase the precept by 7.5% for Band D property, that we task the clerk with a target of £25,000 cost savings as part of the cost and efficiency review, and that committees looked at their budgets in detail with a view to refining them within the overall cost base that has been set as part of this meeting and by council in the future. So all in favour of that then, please. That's 5 against, 2 and abstentions. I think we've got 1. Okay, so that's carried. Thank you very much for your deliberations, fellow members. So I'm going to move to item, 9A, not 10A, which is the Orchard Centre report. I believe we no longer need to consider this under exempt because we've received an updated copy without. Sorry? Yeah, no, I'm moving to an item. I will come back to the public open session. I'm looking to consider the item 9A, the Orchard Community Centre report, under items for consideration, as we no longer need to consider it under exempt business because the report no longer contains the staffing issue items, and then we'll follow on to the rest of the agenda. Okay, so any comments on the Orchard Centre report then? Mr. Toppin, did you want to introduce it?
If I just may introduce it very, very briefly, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. But basically what members should have is a report which is marked revised, as the chairman has indicated, taking out references to matters which would normally be dealt with under exempt. And I think the whole point of this report is to basically give a position statement to members as to where we are. There were a series of recommendations which have never been formally adopted, but we would like to move on those. You know, although there's some dates been given for them, I mean, obviously, you know, we are moving towards these, and of course, again, I say of course, but some of these have been included in the discussions that you had earlier in the meeting concerning the fees and charges for the orchard. The only other thing I would like to point out just very, very quickly, and it may help in the deliberations, the outturn for orchard was reforecast at 24,000. I think I can confidently say that I think we're going to hit 30,000 in terms of income from hires. So I've already found you 6,000 without working very, very hard at it. I'm pretty confident of that, because having looked at the end of November outturn figure, and we had, you know, obviously another 4 months, we can quite easily achieve another 6,000 without any problem. But so effectively, the report is before you. I'll take any questions or comments, Mr. Chairman, if that's
okay. I will just say that a 6,000 increase in revenue is not a delivery against a cost saving target. But on that, I think we've covered the fees and charges in the earlier items. So it's really just considering the recommendations around the booking systems and marketing, I believe, to look at. Councillor Strawn.
Chairman, just the one question I have. We've got here a financial report to 31st of July 2021 on this. I would have preferred to have seen one at least until November 2021, which would have given us a much better idea of the overall situation, because the last couple of years have been very strange for more reasons than one. And I would have expected for a report coming through at this time that we'd have had more up-to-date figures, which would substantiate exactly where the Orchard Centre is going, because at least, or even a comparison, we could have seen what had happened in the latest 4 months, which would be more realistic in my view than something that is 6 months out of date.
Can I comment, Mr.
Councillor Russell.
As you say, Chairman, we've already looked at the fees and charges. We have looked at this report before at council. The items that are under booking systems, my understanding that is that if there's any cost there, then that's built into the budget figure for implementing the finance review. So I think we just need to ask staff to go ahead with that, and I'd like to propose that. And as far as marketing is concerned, there are some ideas there, and I'm sure there'll be lots of other things that we can do going forward as marketing. But I think we just need to ask staff to implement both the booking systems and the marketing.
Councillor Fage.
I'll second that. Sorry, I'll second that. Just 2 notes, and they don't necessarily need to form part of the proposal, but referring back to what we mentioned in the fees and charges, I think a formal Orchard Centre policy is important so that we have something to implement at the centre. And if I might just say, I know something that is important, something that councillors need to do better is to offer a sense of prioritisation over things. And if I might suggest, actually, I think the marketing stuff is probably the most important. When I look at it looks like the hall is well used, but the training centre perhaps less so. There's huge opportunities there to, with a bit of a nudge to get people in and, paying the fees rather than the room standing, emptier than perhaps they need to be. So I might just suggest policy and prioritisation of the market.
Did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, having listened to Councillor Fage and looking again at the booking systems, there is reference to terms and conditions maybe needing to be changed. So I think we need to ask for the report that covers the fees items and any other items in booking systems. And I think we need to ask for that. We also need to ask to approve terms and conditions going forward, and both of which I think will come to this committee at its next meeting, hopefully. Okay. So I'm taking that on board. So we're asking officers to implement the booking systems and the marketing as far as it goes, but we do need a proper policy for the Orchard Centre for its charging and things like the teenage parties mentioned here.
Yeah.
And yeah, we need the policy and we need the terms and conditions.
Agreed. Okay, Councillor Alban.
Teenage parties has just been mentioned. I'd like to understand a little bit more what's behind this. There needs to be a policy for teenage 18th and 21st parties. So what is that about? I couldn't find any reference to it.
I think it's just a standard thing, is they're generally considered to be a higher risk of there being antisocial behaviour, and therefore we ought to have a policy. I think it's for us to consider what that policy might be as it comes forward. I don't think there's any specific recommendation of what it should or shouldn't be at this point.
Yeah, so I would suggest that there might be other gatherings, parties that might fall into that category.
Yeah, I would agree.
Mr. Something, Chair? Okay. This report actually was written by Philip some while ago now, and there's been different variations on it for different committees. So this report now really is looking at the operational context, the operating model for the orchard, and it makes a number of recommendations. I think some of the implementation timelines could be better. and they need to be reflected upon again. I think the report is growing old a little bit now. I think that this is a project, it's a piece of work that needs to be managed. So I would expect officers to come back to members with a clear project timeline and a clearly update members on a regular basis to reassure them that progress is being made.
Okay, so I mean, I think this is the report that's before us with timelines. I think the proposal has been to accept that with the timelines here. So if this isn't going to be met, then I suspect the Gantt chart will have red on it, like the assets register one, on that basis. Councillor North.
This is no longer exempt because the documents do not contain any reference to study issues. The document I have.
The copy that was emailed out to you yesterday, there was one sent out to you earlier in the week.
It's the same thing.
It's the same without the staffing section has been removed from it, but it was emailed to you yesterday.
Just for absolute clarity. Yeah. So for clarity purposes, Councillor North, you had an original version. It was under exempt. It was amended, and the HR issues were taken out, which is now why it's now in open forum.
Councillor Russell.
Can we move to the vote, please? Because
yeah,
it doesn't matter what the timelines are.
Indeed.
We just need officers to get on with it.
I was just about to do so. I was just letting you speak. So the proposal is to accept the recommendations under the booking systems and marketing, and to ensure that we include those elements within the future decisions on the policy and the rules, etc. Yeah. So all in favour of that then, please. Thank you very much. That's unanimous, which brings us on to no matters for information. So moves on to public open session. Anyone like to speak? No. In which case, I would like to close the meeting. Thank you all for coming this evening.